Hi everyone, in this video of Accelerated Chess Dragon, we're going to be looking at a very famous game played between two former world champions, Viswanathan Anand and Garry Kasparov. This was played in the PCA GP Credit Suisse Blitz tournament in 1996 in Geneva, Switzerland, and this is an example of a game that just goes to show that no matter what level you are, even if you are a former world champion, we all make misjudgments and errors, even in advantageous positions. So, without further ado, let's see this game. Anand has the white pieces, and he opens with e4, c5 by Kasparov, knight f3, d6. So this is the Sicilian defense, and this is the open variation, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and now a6, the Najdorf variation. Bishop e3, and now knight g4, a usual move that tries to chase the bishop around the board and kind of distract white from his development. So bishop g5, and now a bit of a bishop chase, and now bishop to g7 by Kasparov. So simply developing his bishop and getting ready to castle. Bishop to e2 by Anand, getting ready to win some material. h5, bishop takes g4, bishop takes g4. So Anand has given up the bishop pair, but he's doing it because the knight on g4 was quite annoying, and he just wants to get rid of it. So f3 by Anand, and now bishop to d7. Bishop to f2, reinforcing the d4 knight and getting ready to castle so that you don't worry about moves such as queen d6. Knight c6 by Kasparov, developing and also trying to put pressure on the d4 knight. Queen d2, and an idea here that might be played is knight takes c6. After something like, say, rook c8, then there is knight takes c6, and after something like bishop takes c6, queen takes g5. So Kasparov prepares for this variation, and he plays knight e5, seemingly giving up a pawn. But if Anand were to take this pawn, then this would be completely losing, because after bishop to h6, you have three moves. If queen takes h5 is played, then bishop d2 check, and that wins the queen on the spot. If you play, after here, if you play queen h4, then there's knight g6, and now you have two moves from here, queen g3 and queen takes h5. If queen g3 is played, then just h4 will trap the queen, and if you play queen takes h5, then you could play bishop d2 check, yes, but you could also just play knight f4, and if the queen goes to h4, you grab the g2 pawn. Otherwise, you're simply in a way better position. So instead, there's also this move queen g3, but that also loses because of h4. And now after h4, the queen will have to take on h4, and now you could play bishop d2 check, but an even better move is knight g6. And you could play queen h5 or queen g3. If queen g3 is played, then there is bishop to f4, trapping the queen. And if you play queen h5, then there is knight to f4, and yet again you will win material. Therefore, Anand did not play any of that, but rather he simply just castled. And now g4, so this is signaling to Anand that he wants to get ready for a kingside attack. Anand plays f4, just slips by that pawn, and now knight c4, attacking the queen attacks the knight with queen e2, and now rook c8, defending the knight, and also maybe foreshadowing an idea of knight takes b2. Because this could be very useful as it eliminates the defender of the knight, and if you play something like, say, rook ab1, then there's even this knight takes b2 option, and after rook takes b2, rook takes c3, and you got a very active position for your rook. I mean, it has this completely open c-file for itself. So that's why b3 was played, trying to kick the knight away, and then Anand's intention is to move the knight. So knight a3, attacking the knight on c3, and also maybe trying to put some pressure on the c2 pawn. Knight d5, moving the knight away. e6, attacking the knight, and the knight can't go to e3 because bishop takes d4 is present. And actually here, knight b6 was a possibility by Anand. Because if you grab the b6 knight with your queen, then there is this knight takes e6 move. And there's an attack on the queen. There's also an attack on this g7 bishop. And if that g7 bishop falls, it'll come with check, the knight can retreat, and then you've just eliminated a very crucial piece in black's defending position. I mean, here you could try something like queen takes f2 check, and after something like maybe queen takes f2, there is f takes e6, and I mean, white is slightly better here, even though he does have a queen for 3 minor pieces. It's said that this is actually better for white. So knight b6 is a possibility that was missed. However, Anand played knight b4, simply retreating his knight, and now queen a5 by Kasparov, attacking the knight, and now queen e1, h4, trying to push forward, and an idea here is g3, and you can imagine that if something like rook c1 was played, then there's actually this possibility of playing g3. And g3, in my opinion, would be quite nice, because it's either trying to open up more lines with g takes h2, or it's maybe trying to play, I mean, if you play h takes g3, then there's a trick here. There's h takes g3, and if you here it's like you're going to lose material, because if you play bishop to e3, can you spot how black can win here? Okay, so the correct answer is rook h1 check, and after king takes h1, the queen comes all the way to h5 check, and after king g1, queen h2, this is checkmate. And if you don't want to really have that happen to you, then you'd have to play something like bishop takes g3, but this would allow bishop takes d4. Anand would simply be down 2 pieces, and that would not be a very fun position. So this is kind of why he played his next move, bishop e3, just getting away from the g3 possibility in itself. Now, if g3 is played, you could simply just play something like h3 and lock the position up. So h3 was played, and now you yet again lock the position up with g3. Knight b5, attacking this knight on d4, and also there's this bishop on g7, pinning this knight to the rook on a1. And you cannot take the knight, not because after bishop takes a1, black is winning, because in fact after bishop takes a1, white is actually better. He has knight takes d6 check, and after something like knight takes c8 check, rook takes c8, queen takes a1, queen takes b4, and okay, you haven't lost a piece here, but black is down a pawn, and this could be a bit of a problem for him. But the main reason why you shouldn't capture on b5 is that there's simply bishop takes b5, attacking this rook on f1. If you play c4, then black will simply just grab the rook on a1. Right after c4, you could play bishop takes a1 here, and after queen takes a1, you could castle, and now you're going to capture this b4 knight next. And finally, last but not least, if you play something like knight to d3 to block this, and also say that like a1 is going to be played, then I will just grab your queen. Then black can play bishop c3, attacking the queen, forcing it to move off of this diagonal, and then he will grab the exchange, and now he's completely winning. Therefore, you cannot play knight takes b5, it'll simply be bad for you. So that's why rook to d1 was played. And after rook d1, knight c3 was played, attacking the rook on d1, but also it's trying to get the knight on b4, because the queen's defense is now being blocked by the knight on c3. So knight d3 was played, queen c7, just retreating the queen, now threatening to win the exchange, or the pawn. Anand saves the exchange, he plays rook c1, but now knight takes e4, winning a pawn. f5, and now e5. f6 by Anand, he's trying to get some attack, and here you cannot play e takes d4, because after f takes g7, you'd have to play something like rook g8, and after bishop takes d4, this is a way better position for Anand. He can bring his rook into f4, he can bring his knight into f2, and then he has so many possibilities of what he can do here. So that is why, instead of playing e takes d4, knight takes f6 was played by Kasparov. And now Anand brings his knight into f5, and now we have an exchange on f5, and now queen c6 by Kasparov, threatening queen to g2, and this would be checkmate. Queen e2 by Anand, just defending checkmate, and now queen e4. So attacking the rook, and also getting ready to play knight d5. Rook f2, knight d5 is what Kasparov does, and now rook e1. And Kasparov could just easily play knight takes e3. And after this knight takes e3 move, this would kind of compel Anand to play queen takes e3, and after an exchange, say queen takes e3, rook takes e3, Kasparov can just castle, he can play f5 and then e4, get his bishop activated, and he will have a very good position. He has no problems whatsoever. However, he played queen takes e3, and this means that Anand does not have to take it, because, I mean, when the knight took, then you kind of had to take it, because, well, there was no other move, there was no intermediate move you had. But here, there's an intermediate move, and that's queen takes g4. And now Kasparov could either part with the exchange or part with his queen. He chooses to part with his queen, and this queen takes g4 move is quite effective because it attacks this rook on c8 and this bishop on g7. You can't defend this rook on c8, meaning that if you were to move your queen, you'd lose the exchange. So that's why he castled, and now after rook takes e3, knight takes e3, you've lost so much material now. So queen takes h3 by Anand, simply winning the pawn, and now knight takes c2. So now he has a rook and a minor piece, in this case a bishop, for the queen. But now it's a bit troublesome because, I mean, Anand still has more material than him, and he might actually find a way to win this. So queen d7, mainly trying to threaten a move like rook takes f7, but it's also just trying to grab these pawns. So knight d4, queen takes b7, and now a5, saving the a6 pawn, but now king g2, and now Kasparov brings his rook into the game. Rook c3, knight to b2, and now knight to c2, maybe trying to reposition the knight on some square like e3 or b4. Knight c4 was played, d5, and this comes with a tactical purpose. Assume that Anand were to play queen takes d5, how would you continue the game? I encourage you to pause the video and try solving this. So if you've given it a go, the correct answer is rook takes c4. And this wins because if b takes c4 is played, then knight e3 check wins. And it's practically the same thing if queen takes c4. Knight e3 check will still win. And if you play something like queen takes a5, then, I mean, Anand is simply just lost the knight for no reason. You can just play rook c8, and now you have a rook and two minor pieces for a queen. So this could actually do something for Kasparov. Instead, though, Anand played knight d6, so now he has no opportunity of doing that. Knight e3 check, king h3, and now f5, with the idea of playing something like rook f6 and rook h6 mate. Queen d7, attacking the f5 pawn, and now f4. Queen e6 check, and king h7 was played, and here Anand played knight f7. And now this forces Kasparov to actually give up the rook for this knight on f7. And if you think that this is actually a bad move, then I'll explain the reason why he played rook takes f7. Let's assume that e4 was played for some reason. Then there is this knight g5 check move, and after king to h8, queen g6. There is no way to stop queen h7, and the mate threat is too strong that this would force Kasparov to resign. So, therefore, he played rook takes f7, eliminating the knight, and after queen takes f7, rook c6. He's trying so hard to deliver checkmate. I can just feel Kasparov. He's like one move away from delivering rook h6 mate, but now, guess what Anand plays? gf4. So now he's cleared the g3 square for his king to go to. So after rook f6, attacking the queen, queen c7, e4 was played. Now maybe Kasparov can solidify with knight to f5, and maybe he might have something. He can defend the bishop on g7. Okay, this would be a bad position for him, but I mean, this is already a bad position for Kasparov. So he must try something like knight f5, and then he can just solidify. But Anand doesn't allow him. He plays f5 himself. And now, if knight takes f5 is played, then there is queen d7. That's a possibility. And although you do have rook h6 check, king g4, and knight to, say, d6, you did just grab the pawn. There is one downside to this, and that is now you can start pushing this pawn, get a square for your king, and then play rook to g2. And then, yeah, that's all over now. So that's why it's very hard to play this position. So after f5 was played, d4 by Kasparov. He's trying to gain something maybe with his pawns. They are connected, so maybe he could maybe create something like a pass pawn. So queen e7, rook h6 check, king to g3, knight to d1, attacking the rook, and after rook f4, Kasparov actually blunders with e3. He could have probably done something like knight e3 here, and okay, he is still losing, yes, but maybe he would have had a better chance. However, here after e3 was played, Anand simply played rook g4, and here Kasparov threw in the towel. There is no way to prevent queen takes g7 checkmate, and this is basically just game over. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you have any suggestions or feedback for me, please let me know in the comments section, and stay tuned for more chess.